My name is Allie, and I'm the program coordinator at Women's Studies. Welcome to our space, and welcome to the Brown Bag today. If you don't know the person you're sitting next to, take a minute and say hello. If you do know them, say hi anyway.
Rest my face.
All right, maybe you gain a friend, hopefully. We want to begin like we do by recognizing that we're on occupied land and this is Haudenosaunee territory. We also have a lot to acknowledge today, I think. There's a lot going on in our world, there's a lot going on in our campus, so as Women's Studies, we wanted to pay respect to a couple of things, and this is not by any means an all-inclusive list of what's going on in our world, but just a few things to be thinking about. Today marks 1 year since our community lost 2 students, Ryan and Carrie. There are opportunities to celebrate their lives today on campus. On the quad, there's a project about communal love and things like that, so I'd encourage you to go if you would like to. Thursday will mark the 2nd anniversary of the sit-in at Colgate, and it's our deepest gratitude to the current students, alumni, faculty, and staff who bravely envisioned and enacted and continue to create a community built on radical love and justice. In the spirit of this sit-in, we want to recognize that we don't live in a bubble. We're not isolated from the rest of the world. Terrence Crutcher didn't have to die. He didn't deserve to die, and he deserves dignity in his death. We need to, as a center, say unapologetically that Black Lives Matter. And with all of that heartache in mind and celebration to the sit-in, we just want to let you know this is a space where you are cared about and you matter to us. So, if you're looking for a space to be today or any day of the year, we're here. We're around, we don't bite. Okay, so thinking about all those things in our mind while we move on. We have a ton of amazing events going on this week. So just to think about some things here. Wednesday, you can join Lasso at Bremer Theater from 6 to 7:30 for Inca Sun's performance. On Thursday at 7:30 at Love, we have Michael Sam coming. He's the first college player who was out as gay, who was drafted to the NFL. Should be a really interesting talk. Friday we have like 100 events, but you could go to all of them actually. So we'll start with in order. Friday at 2:30 at Alana, there's going to be some seniors and juniors who are facilitating a really informal discussion about the sit-in. Thinking about 2 years later what that means. So it's 2:30 Friday at Alana. And then the next event in chronological order would be at 5 p.m. in Golden Auditorium. Mosquita Imari is showing us the Friday Night Film Series, and the director and writer of that movie will be here next week. So you want to see it and you want to be here. It's going to be awesome. So that's next Tuesday. And then that at 7:30 on Friday at Bunch, we have Lounge, and Lasso is bringing a guest poet, Sonia Diaseca. Thank you, Benny. So there's a ton of things, you can do them all. So, but don't stress yourself out. And yeah, so those are all the things coming up. Just a reminder to help us clean up. There's compost in the back and trash, and there's signs about how to do that if you're confused about compost. We all get that way sometimes. But I want to just go ahead and move right into our amazing brown bag. We have 4 amazing Women's Studies senior concentrators who are going to be sharing their thoughts with you about study abroad. So turn over to that. Thanks. Hello. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. I guess we'll just go down the line and introduce ourselves.
Women's Studies majors. I went on the Santa Fe, New Mexico trip out of 4 lovely women here. I'm the only one that was technically not abroad in terms of outside of what we see as United States territory. I'll talk more about that in criticizing that. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Grace Western. Again, we're all seniors in studies. That's redundant, sorry. And I studied abroad last spring in Cameroon in West Africa through SIT, which is an approved program. I'll talk more about this now. Oh, I got one. Hi, can you hear me?
Speak up.
Okay. Hi, I'm Romelia. I went on the SIT program as well. I went to SIT Amsterdam, and it was International Perspectives on Gender and Sexuality. I think that was it. That's a mouthful. Yeah.
I'm Martha. I went on the Colgate study abroad to Australia as part of the biology like natural science in the spring of last year.
I wonder if we should just use this mic. 'Cause it
Yeah,
seems
I
so
feel like
warm.
Okay, so maybe we can start with talking about community and having a solid community for learning and developing your critical analysis of your study abroad program. Oh, you want me to talk more about the program? That's cool too. Sorry. So I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The program is a Colgate program. It's offered every other year, so a lot of people don't know about it. I definitely suggest going on it. It's really a life-changing experience. So I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico in the fall of 2015, so a year from this semester. It's a Native American studies, women's studies, anthropology, and English trip. So 4 different majors, and it's very interdisciplinary, and that's sort of the reason I chose the program. I don't like to focus my energies in one specific thing, and I'm usually sort of all over scattering, bringing things from different aspects of my life. So I knew I wanted to be doing something that was a little more interdisciplinary in nature so that I could sort of widen my breadth of knowledge a little bit. And that was led by Professor Sarah Wider from our campus. Who's the best?
And so, as I said, I studied abroad in Cameroon. And so Cameroon's, the program itself was called Development and Social Change. And essentially it was critiquing the narrative of development, who gets developed, what is development, and specifically like along racialized and nationalized lines. And so it was an approved program by Women's Studies, which is how I found it. And so essentially when I was going through the process of figuring out where I wanted to study abroad, I wanted to go to a French-speaking country, but I did not want to go to Europe. And so I was looking through Francophone Africa, which is problematic in itself. We'll talk about colonialism. And so Women's Studies has a really extensive list. So if you're looking to go to an unconventional study abroad location, please go through the Women's Studies list. They have like a great list. Even if you're just like, if you're not a Women's Studies major and are just interested in like understanding and like, don't even know where to find programs, that's a really great resource. I'm also a political science double major, and so I went through the Women's Studies approved list. I found Cameroon, which looked like I could also get political science credit for it. And I had a professor, my advisor, was more than happy to, and I ended up getting more poli-sci credit than I did Women's Studies, actually. And so, but that was kind of my journey to that. And then in Cameroon itself, SIT is a US-based like program, but they have programs all over the world and typically focus in, again, unconventional study abroad locations or with unconventional topics in those locations. So they each have a specific topic where you go. They're homestay, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of them are very homestay focused. So I had 3 homestays. I was in the major metropolitan capital city. I was in a local city on the ocean, and then I was in a rural village. And all of these were homestays, and all of them were in French / their ethnic language as well.
So a reminder, I went to Amsterdam, and there was also a 2-week excursion to Morocco as part of the program. And I was also in a homestay. I only had 1 homestay. Well, technically I had 2, but that's because my original host mother went to Suriname for like 3 weeks at last minute at the beginning of the program, and they moved me somewhere where I have like someone taking care of me. And I could get academic credit, but I didn't really use it for academic credit, and it's like counted as both women's studies and educational studies, but it's really better for LGBTQ studies. So I would, consider that if you apply to this program. And some of the themes we talked about were feminist studies and activism in the Netherlands, sexuality studies and activism, LGBT studies and activism, gender, sexuality, and Islam in the Moroccan context, gender, sexuality in post-colonial communities, gender, sexuality in post-migration communities, and there's also Dutch, intro to Dutch, and research methods, and there's also, I had to take a view. and research methods, and ISP, which is an independent study project, and that was me conducting my own research, volunteering, writing my own research paper.
So I'm also an environmental biology major as well as a women's studies major. And the reason why I chose to go to the Australia study group program was one, because at the time I was really excited that there was an Australia program, and I wanted to see what the other side of the world looked like, you know, like down under. But also because I knew who the director, the professor leading it, and I really liked him a lot, and then, like, his wife was my advisor. It was just like a whole thing. So we, contrary to like the home day, we stood in dorms. We're Colgate's affiliated, or we took classes. Anyways, the university that we were in, or hosted us, was University of Wollongong in New South Wales, and we stood in their dorms. You know, as part of my home. We took 3 classes in their university, 3 classes of our choice. I also got women's studies credit for one of them, and one of them had to be related to Australia in some kind of way. And then the other one had to be a natural science, because the program was focused on natural science. And then one we took with Eddie Watkins, which was the director from Colgate.
To start.
Okay. Cool. So now we can sort of talk about our experiences off campus. So maybe to start, one of the main tensions with study abroad is colonialism, and I found, so specifically in my program, and I think Grace wanted to talk about this a little bit too. So the reason I said I was kind of abroad, but I mean not abroad, and so when people are like, "Oh, you went to New Mexico, you didn't go abroad." Well, actually, I spent over 20 hours every single week volunteering on Pueblo land, which technically is not United States land because it is independent land. The rest of the United States isn't United States land anyways. So a lot of my experience, led by Professor Wider and some really amazing students that were on the program, was sort of concentrating on what it meant to be in another person's space. A lot of programs with study abroad have this, it's very difficult. I mean, I think there's so many wonderful experiences in going abroad, but sometimes you really have to be concerned with what space you're taking up in that location, and what your purpose is in being there. There's a very fine line that you have to balance on if you're going to respect the space of another person, especially if it's on land that we stole and then we gave back in the form of a reservation. And so I spent 2 days a week we had classes, but then other 2 days a week we had required volunteer work. It was called an internship on the Colgate Study Abroad website, which was ironic, but it was more service work that we were doing. And so I was volunteering at a local pueblo. It was called Tezuki Day School. Tezuki Pueblo is about 20 minutes outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico. And the day school was students from kindergarten up through 6th grade. It was less than 30 students altogether. And I was assistant teaching kindergarten and 1st grade. I actually didn't have an interest in educational studies going into that, but I really, really loved the experience, and I've sort of been taking more educational studies classes because of that, so that's cool. But a lot of my experience was mainly trying to figure out how to manage being in their space and teaching them about where I came from, and then learning from them more. And I think I found it becomes this difficult relationship of reciprocity and who gives who what, and you don't want to take too much. I mean, it was challenging because I spent a lot of my time tutoring one student in the classroom. Since it was kindergarten and 1st grade, the teacher that was teaching actually had to manage 2 different grades in one classroom, but also that did help in the form of setting community. So, you have your positives and negatives of that pedagogy. But so she wanted me to help tutor another student in a group that was sort of behind in some of the academic interests of the rest of the students. But so I sort of tried to help her with writing and reading and math skills. And at the end of the semester, I think it was my biggest like snap towards understanding what the purpose of this experience was. My last day on the Pueblo, I went to give everybody hugs, and I realized leaving that I had never actually spoken to any of the parents of these students. And I felt a little weird about that because my community, where I came from a small town in upstate New York, it's very much like connected. And the students' community there is the same way. But I went into the Santa Fe experience and expecting to be thanked for my volunteer work and thinking, oh, like I'm coming in, I'm really putting all this energy to helping these kids who really need me, blah, blah, blah. And I left and I realized, that's not really my purpose. Then I finally understood that when I actually left, which is ironic because I was there for 4 months and I finally got it once I left. But maybe that's part of all of the study abroad opportunity is really putting yourself out of it, and you don't realize until you come back home how much you've changed. But I think my biggest takeaway from it was learning that putting volunteer work on a resume and everything, and when you say, I taught Native American kids in a Pueblo community, kindergarten and first grade, that doesn't really sound appropriate, doesn't sound right, and it doesn't actually represent what I was doing. I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay, so on that note, as I said, I was in a homestay kind of scenario for the entire program. So my program consisted of 8 women, 7 of who were white, 1 woman identified as woman of color, and that was a pretty small size for an SIT program. We also we had 4 Cameroonian students with us as well, and so they were incorporated into all of our classes. All of our classes were led by this program. Like we would travel with the program. We were just always with the program. They kind of dictated everything. And then all of our professors were Cameroonian. Our director was Cameroonian. Everyone who's involved in the program in Cameroon was Cameroonian, which I think is really important in the aspects of studying abroad and kind of getting that experience. And so for me, this is just like there's a lot. The most important aspect for me was the homestays. That's really where I think, and they knew that as well. I think that was the point. I mean, I'm going to a place where from my and it's also important to recognize what is I am a white woman a white American woman coming into Cameroon. What does my body represent? What does this mean? Is this ethical? And so if you are thinking of, within that realm, I think the most important thing to do first is to look at the history of a country to understand, what is the past? How do you relate to the past, and how does that affect your, what does your body do in that space? We were talking about space, space is a thing that needs to be considered. And so it's still up for debate, internally for me, whether it was ethical of me to be there, but I went and now I am back. And essentially, so we were with our homestays, and I had an amazing experience. It was really, really challenging. It was also really difficult to be a white woman in where there are very few white people. And so walking, I was grabbed a lot and harassed a lot, and that was just part of my everyday life. And a lot of the other white women on the trip felt that way as well. And it was really interesting. My friend, who's the woman of color on our trip, was now you know what it feels like to be me in the U.S. This is the most comfortable I've ever felt in my life, and I am in another country in Cameroon, and this is what I feel every day in the U.S. I don't want to go home, and I think that really resonated with all of us. And so essentially that was really challenging, but I have never felt so also intertwined with community. My homestay family was so adamant that I understand their ethnicity, and so my home family Yaoundé was Funban, and so I learned like the greetings. Like every morning, I'd wake up and greet them in their language, and like go to bed and would say goodnight in their language. And I really tried to integrate myself in that way and kind of understand. Like I would go to like marriage ceremonies that lasted all weekend. And I was really welcomed into those communities. And at first, I was hesitant about like where was my place in these scenarios. And I was I was very concerned about like appropriating certain aspects or kind of just like exoticizing them. But in also a lot of regards, like my family would be really disappointed if I didn't like go out there and try the dance that they were teaching me or like wear what they were wearing. So it was kind of trying to find that balance, which I think I found really challenging. But in the end, I just tried to listen to what my family wanted of me in that scenario. And I felt like that was the best way to do it. So I lived in a big metropolitan city, and that was Yaoundé. And that was like, you could see there was just like it was really interesting. I also lived with all women. Sorry, I'm like, I had a mom and a grandmother and two sisters, and so it was also amazing to just be like in an all-female household. And my grandmother was definitely the matriarch. She was so powerful, and also and part of it was like yelling was just like a form of love, and so like I would get yelled at a lot, and I was just like, what is happening? And it was all in French, and so I was just like an idiot, and I couldn't express myself, and they were just like, why are you so stupid? And I was like, I'm not, I promise. But it was great, and by the end, like I was really upset to be leaving, and my grandmother just turned to me and she said, "La vie tourne," which is like life turns, like life goes, and it was just beautiful. I'm in the flow. But anyways, I also had the independent study research part of the program, which is the last 5 weeks of the trip, or of my time abroad, not trip. I guess it is trip too, but anyways, and that was really challenging. Because I also was like, I am a white body, and I have to do research, and like specifically like in an indigenous community, like what does that mean? What does that say? Like what is this being? And like, I'm sorry, I'm saying like a lot. So I ended up staying in a rural community, Batufam, which we had stayed in as a group, and I went back, and I ended up studying how women in that community use dance as like a form of political resistance and as a form of like communicating their dissatisfaction with like certain aspects of like the chief or whether the notables in the community and how they were running the community. So just for some background, the community I was in the rural west part of the country. It was a chieftaincy, so there was a chief. He was polygamy, so he had 27 wives. Most of the people in the community, it was like a polygamous community, so most people were part of polygamous marriages. And it was very rustic, so like I lived in a like mud brick clay house, bless you, and most people did. And like I'd like it was in the jungle essentially, so I like walked like 45 minutes to like go to school and like through the path. So that's just like some context of what this was. But that was really rewarding, and I really struggled through that process trying to figure out if it's possible to do that work without being a colonizing body. Batufam had also been burned to the ground in the 1950s by the French. Cameroon was colonized initially by Germany, but then also by Britain and France. And so that was something I really struggled with the entire time. But in the end, I really felt completely connected to the community. My mom would take me to all of their like local kind of celebrations, and I learned how to make a lot of food, and I would make it with them, and that was a sign of respect that I was not just like a white woman standing in the background, which they had seen a lot too, but that I had really like tried and practiced like learning how to make traditional food, that I was wearing the traditional dress like while I was in this community, and that I was also trying to pick up language. And so like when I would do brief interactions with people, like while I was on my walk to school, like I would say it in Batufam, like all that good stuff. So yeah, that's like a brief overview.
So I guess like on the opposite end of like Amsterdam, like a lot of people just think about weed in the red light district. But it's a lot more than that, and people often forget that the Netherlands is a colonial power, and a lot of those structures and a lot of like its success like now is like stems from like colonization and like the exploitation of black and brown bodies. And so the, two of the like the former colonies are like Suriname and Indonesia, and like my host mother was half Surinamese. She was mixed race, half Surinamese, and so we went on a lot of walking tours of Amsterdam, and so one of the walking tours was actually like decolonization of Amsterdam, and they'd show us like all the the church, the very beautiful church in the center next to Dam Square, where there were like slave auctions and things like that, showing us really bringing up the past and like saying it's still part of it. And I know one of my favorite assignments was decolonize the museum, and we were split up into groups and assigned to different museums, and mine was right down the street from our center, from like where I took classes, and I went, and it was like the Van Loon family museum. So it was a house, and there was like this very prestigious family that lived there, and they still own the house. And I took a brochure, and they said like the illustrious or some very flashy adjective or something like that. Van Loon family got their are owners of like the East or West India Trading Company. I'm really bad with names and geography, so whatever. But then, and no mention after that. And if you think about it, the East and West India Trading Companies, they traded human cargo. They traded they dealt in slavery, but they didn't mention it. They told us about their wealth, their clothes, things like that, like where this one plate was from, and it just was really unsettling, because you also realize the family owns the house, the family owns the museum, so they have a say over what is and isn't put on the brochure. And it just it was really it really blew my mind. But that's what a lot of Amsterdam is. It's erasing a lot of their past, and kind of saying, oh, we're all happy, we all get along, everyone's Dutch here. That's the only identity. They accept the Dutch identity. So if you're anything outside of that, you're other. So they pride themselves on being. So the current political climate is really interesting, because they compare themselves. A lot of people compare themselves to the U.S., where the U.S. is blatantly racist, the U.S. is blatantly sexist, the U.S. is blatantly homophobic. Especially in comparison to the Netherlands, where gay marriage was legalized in 2001, where weed and sex work were decriminalized, and then it's it seems like a utopia, right? Unless you're Muslim, because there's so much Islamophobia there. You could just I would took public transportation to get to classes, and you could see the white conductors being blatantly racist towards hijabi women, things like that. And so there's a lot of homo nationalism and pinkwashing, where it's these are our gays, and if you treat them, if you're not pro gay marriage, if you treat them bad, you're not Dutch, and so what that meant was refugees and Muslim immigrants who are still new, they weren't seen as Dutch, they weren't, or even people who were there for 3 generations. And there's also this assigned this preconceived notion that if you were a brown body, you were obviously homophobic and you couldn't be gay. And so one of the things I did for my independent research, I volunteered at this center called the Hangout 10, and it was a LGBTQ community center in Rotterdam, which was about an hour out of Amsterdam. And it was a place for LGBTQ youth, people under 25. And there were a lot of people of color, and there were a lot of refugees, and so I spent time there. And by spending time, I was supposed to be volunteering, but they really didn't have anything for me to do. I couldn't contribute in any way, so I just kind of sat there, had conversations with people, talked about Beyonce, because that was around the time Lemonade came out. and yeah, but so it was really more of an experience for me, I gained more from it than like the center did. Like I like didn't even speak or read or write Dutch, so I couldn't like help them with promotions or anything. They also have a political figure who's a lot like Trump. His name is like Gert Wilders, and he's one of the faces of like homo nationalism, and like he pretty much said like kick all the Muslims out in one of his speeches, and it's just like, so don't be fooled, it's not a utopia, but it is like in terms of rights for like women and like LGBTQ people, it is a lot better than the US. And so I think a lot of it for me was like balancing that, like balancing how it is better, but then also where the work can be done. And then because I like kind of went in like, oh, it's gonna be great, you know, like they have like they legalize gay marriage and stuff, and then you like slowly learn just like how deep rooted racism is and everything. And also, if you do want to talk about the red light district, we could talk about the gentrification that's happening there. We can talk about sex workers' rights and how right now it's illegal for two sex workers to like live together, because then it's a brothel. So if some sex workers take clients in their own home, and so for safety they'll live with another sex worker. So say the client doesn't want to pay or gets violent, they can't necessarily report it because their living situation is illegal. You know, things like that. And then there's this like plan in Amsterdam. I forget the name of it, but it's really gentrification. So like they're pushing out the windows, which is where like some sex, you could rent the windows per day or day and night, and so that's where some sex workers are, and they're like slowly closing down all of them, and then they're gonna add like red light district themed shops and like sex shops and things like that, cafes and coffee shops, and so it's really just like a glorification of like what happened, but they also don't want it there anymore. So right now, like the Netherlands is in like a current like political climate where they're sort of becoming more conservative, and a lot of that is in response to the refugee crisis.
I want to start by saying that study abroad is hard. It's so hard. So talking about how I decided to go on to study abroad, I didn't. So I'm from New York City. I'm from the Bronx, and it's very easy for me to go back to the Bronx and be like, oh, okay, so I know where I'm situated. I know my location. I know that just with the way you speak, I know where you're from. So I know that, for example, if I spoke in Spanish, I know he'd be Mexican. Like I know that if my mom would speak, I know she's Puerto Rican. I know where people come from. I feel very comfortable in that. I was always surrounded by a supportive community here. And then to be thrown, like, and this was, I guess, me not knowing much about anything outside of my own space, but being thrown into this completely, well, not completely, but like, when I landed in Australia and I had 4 lovely women with me, or 3, I was 4. I didn't know much of them. I learned to like know them and love them. But at the beginning was super difficult because I saw everybody, and it's not that I don't know. I just feel like it was a very, very white community. This university was very white, very they were really friendly, and that's what threw me off. They were really, really friendly, and like everybody would like say hi. It's kind of like the Colgate hello, like hi, how are you? But like nothing much deeper than that. And and then they would always like, for example, this is what I found really problematic about being in Australia all the time. They would like, we would go to seminars and we would go to like classes, and they would always start by acknowledging the people, the traditional owners of the land in Australia, and the traditional owners of the land in New South Wales, and specifically where we were located, which was the Wadi Wadi people of New South Wales. But you would look around and where are the Wadi Wadi people of New South Wales? I never met one. I never found one. Everybody I looked was white. Everybody I looked was, it was just so weird, because how you're gonna say you're gonna acknowledge someone when you've completely taken away their rights? And that was really hurtful for me. And it's so bizarre. It's so bizarre when I think about it now, that my experience in Australia, it turned out to be one I will always cherish. But at the beginning, I was so confused, and I felt so alone, because as a woman of color in that space, in that dorm of like people who they were just entering school, they were just starting out their, I guess, adulthood. It was, I kind of felt like an older, I kind of felt like a mom kind of way. Like I was like, these people are partying. It is 12 o'clock at night. I need to go to bed. It was really hard. It was really hard to adjust. However, I don't know. It was just really. I started thinking a lot about these things in classes too. So I took social justice in the world of inequality. I took Australian Aboriginal arts, and I also took my science class was basically marine biology. But in the other two classes in Australian Aboriginal arts, I learned about all these great artists, Aboriginal artists who kind of like made a mark on the world in Australia, but not really. Like some of them were international, but a lot of them didn't even get credit in their own homeland. You know, they had to go outside to like France or like England or the US to become a name for themselves, you know? And we learned a lot about the history there, and I was so upset at myself that I didn't research more, or I didn't like delve deeper into Aboriginal history, and how like there's not only one Aboriginal community, there's more than 600, and people don't know that. And I was really upset that people didn't know that, and that I didn't know that, because it's like me erasing their history, me erasing their culture just by being in that place, just by being a tourist in that place. Because when I went to Australia, what I was thinking, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna go see the Great Barrier Reef, and I'm gonna be in like one of the world's like oldest parts of the world. I was very looking at it through a very natural sciencey biology perspective, but I didn't know much about the social aspect of the country that I was going into, like the political kind of sphere of the country that I was going into, and that was really problematic for me, of me not knowing anything. And then of me not knowing anything, that also like turned to me not like realizing that I don't love myself, that I don't love the people who are supposed to be like my brothers and sisters. Because if I really love you and I really know you, then I should, stand with you, stand like I should know much about your culture. I should like, you know what I mean? So that's something that I learned myself. And also, it's something that I realized later on, like I guess too late in the game, because I had already been like, I had already been very like hurt, and I was like, why am I hurt? And I realized it was because I didn't love myself. Um, and I didn't love the land that I was on because I constantly wanted to go back home. I felt so homesick a lot of the times. Um, and I realized that that was problematic for me. And that was also problematic for like and it was also problematic for like I guess me being in a space like that as a woman of color. I don't know if I'm making sense. I don't.
Totally. Totally.
I'm like very sorry. But one of the things that I really did appreciate about this particular campus in Australia, because I can't speak to other campuses because I wasn't there. But in that particular campus, one of the things that I was really grateful for, or not grateful, but like that I saw was how much they cared to, or how many, like, so you see this, like, let me preface. Let me preface with this. This campus is on a hill, right? So a lot of people can't climb this hill unless they have a car, or like some other kind of mode of transportation. Um, so that means that we have a lot of ability on campus. We don't have like a lot of people who are in wheelchairs. We don't have a lot of people who maybe can't like climb this hill because then it would be literally impossible for them to take classes. One of the things that I really appreciated about the campus in Wollongong was that it was flat, and I saw a lot of people in wheelchairs. I saw a lot of people who had some disabilities in the ways that we like Western people consider disabilities, and they would be able to go to class and they would participate in class and they would just be their best self. And I also saw like a lot of older students who were wives and husbands and dads and moms, and that they had jobs and they had kids, and they were all participating in the same space that we were, which is something that I don't see really on this campus a lot, and I don't see on a lot of different campuses, just because they think that school is maybe too late for it. They're too late in the game to go to school, go back to school. So that's something that I really appreciated, was learning from other people who weren't like me. And I like that a lot. So that was one of the things that was different from Colgate's campus and Colgate's community and the communities that I've been around. Another thing that was different was just, or not different, I guess, but like similar was, so around the time that White Lives Matter, the movie White Lives Matter was coming out on this campus, we were in our Australian Aboriginal class, we were also watching, or we watched this movie. It's called Barbecue Area. Everybody should watch it. Yeah, Michael James is in the class. He's the best. He is the best. So this movie is just basically like tables are turned. What happens when the colonizers in Australia were Aboriginal people, Aboriginal Black people, and the colonized were white people. And we had an interesting discussion that was not, it should have been longer than it was, because it only lasted for like a few minutes. But it was interesting to see that like the majority of the people in that classroom were American. They were white American. There was only like a few Australian people in that classroom. And it was interesting because one person got super offended. She was like, oh my God, this is so offensive. I feel like, I don't know why they would like create such a like a message that was you like that was portrayed in that way. They could have said something else, and I was like, so I was like, I'm sorry. Like, do you realize? Do you realize? Do you see yourself? You're not. You're not. You're. She's like, I'm not. I'm not the one who like colonized people, and I was like, okay, well, it doesn't. It's not about you. It's not about you. Like you're still complicit in this. You're like you're not allowed to get offended about something that it's happening to other people, you know. It's still happening in Australia, and um everyone should watch it. It's called Barbecue Area. It's on YouTube. It's only half an hour and it's great. And so yeah, this like idea of, again, like of a utopian society, that Australia is like a party hub. It's true, it's a party hub, but there's also so much things that you're not aware of when you go over there, or when you're planning your trip over there. You're not aware of like the places that you'll go. So that was my experience in New South Wales, but then my experience in Cairns was completely different. Cairns is a tropical Australia. That's where the Great Barrier Reef is at, and the Daintree Rainforest is at as well. So like you go up there and the scenery is completely different. You see it so much, like tourism is like abundant there. Then you see a lot of traditional landowners, and they're just regular people. And we went to a museum I forgot the museum name. Do you remember? Chapokai. And we went to this museum, and the people in the museum, I guess, were acting out their culture. They were like wearing, their traditional outfits. They were showing us how they used to cook outside, how they, the ways that they would like clean the food before eating it to like take out the poison, and like just little things. But then there was this one lady that came and she was talking to us about her traditions of like how you clean up the food, and she was like, yeah, but like I'm not from this particular area. I'm not from, like, my tribe is not in this area. My tribe is like a few miles up, and it's a different one. So I also found that very interesting and very like problematic, because Aboriginal people can't get jobs other than acting out as like Aboriginal people, as like portraying their culture as like a homogenized, not even like I'm from this part and then they're from this part. It's just like one area, one Australia, which is not one Australia. It's a lot of different parts of Australia. And I guess people don't, like, I don't know, I find that really problematic and really like, I find that shouldn't have to be the case. You shouldn't have to act out a traditions that you're not, like, that you don't practice, and it's really problematic that they can only get certain jobs, and those certain jobs have to be doing certain things that are not part of their culture. And I also felt like I was invading them, because living in America is kind of like a privilege that I have as well, just because like we don't know anything, we're ignorant, and they can do stuff for entertainment. I don't know. I don't want people to entertain me just because I'm American. That shouldn't have to be the case. And I felt like that part was, a lot of it was like for entertainment and not for learning purposes at all.
Questions?
What was it like being a U.S. citizen whilst traveling abroad over the last few months? because I know I'm not even in the US anymore, but I was in Australia, and a lot of people would be like, oh my God, the political climate in America right now. So what was that like where you were?
Trump. Like, okay, I could answer that in a lot of ways, but one of the ways is when I at the place I volunteered at, Nat, he's a person in my group, and we both volunteered there. We had to host a cultural night, and so we hosted American night, and we were supposed to talk about like LGBTQ positionality within the United States, and then it ended up being Trump. Like we just talked about Trump, and I'm like, yeah, I know, like he's crazy, and they're like bewildered by it. I'm like actually terrified, and so I'm like, yeah, I'm like, wow, how could you let it get that far? But then also like being American, like I noticed because like Amsterdam is a tourist city, so like they speak English, and like that's also another thing where English is like the colonizing language, and like in Amsterdam, if they see you don't speak Dutch, they'll automatically speak English to you, and so like I had like a lot of people, especially like in terms of like street harassment and catcalling, they like a lot of men can pick out an English accent like from far away, and they'll use it. They're like, "Oh, you're American." I'm like, yeah. And then just like being like kind of like being American, like I struggled with this a lot with my group, where like we were like there's like 20 something people in our group, and we would often do things as a large group, and then like I kind of like cut myself out of the large group bonding after a week. And Alessandra was there too. But like we like would take up a lot of space physically because we're a large group, but also like vocally, like in a lot of places where it's like quieter, I would notice our group would be like a lot louder and things like that, and that would like make me really uncomfortable because like we're not paying attention to like the way things are, like and stuff like that, and then like people are there like drinking their cappuccino and like like trying to like have quiet time, and then our group is there being really loud, like, and it just like there's things like that, and just like I was one of the people who was constantly telling our group to like check their American privilege, because my group was pretty much Colgate. They were from all over. They were from liberal arts schools, like all over the Midwest and the East Coast, and so oftentimes I was like, check your I didn't say check your privilege. I tried to be nice, and I was like, oh, did you consider like you should think about being like a U.S. citizen and traveling abroad, and like you should think about like especially in Morocco. I was like, think of your positionality as a white woman from the U.S. in this country, and like it didn't.
Well, one of like the prime examples for me is that I would get into a taxi cab, and which like taxi cabs basically like 6 people would fit in like 3 seats, and so we just like all cram in, and taxi drivers or everyone in the taxi would assume that I was French until I said that I was American, and when I said that I was American, they liked me infinitely better. Which is like unreal because so essentially like French colonized Cameroon, and so they're like, oh, you're not French, like you're American, you're so great that. And I'm like, America basically colonizes Cameroon, like like if you talk about like economic policies and like all that good stuff, bad stuff, not good stuff. And so, but that was like a really interesting example for me. Like I was always assumed to be French, and when I identified as American, I was appreciated so much more, which is really problematic. And then another thing is that if I was like walking down the street or somewhere, even if I wasn't by myself or if I was a group of a couple other students, specifically men would come up to me and speak in English and they'd be like, oh my God, I studied at the University of Washington, or I studied at the University of Buffalo. Like, here is my email, or most people didn't have emails. Here is my number. This is the address of my house. Please come over and talk to me. I want to talk about Donald Trump. And most people who came up to me knew more about American politics than I did. That was really interesting. And then a lot of people also said to the people who like would come up and find me, would be like, I wish I'd never left the U.S., which was really interesting. And they're like, I just want to talk to you forever because I want to pretend like I'm in the U.S. right now, like compared to Cameroon. And that was, it was really interesting. And then a lot of people also said to the people who like would come up and find me, would be like, I wish I'd never left the U.S., which was really interesting. And they're like, you like I just want to talk to you forever because I want to pretend like I'm in the US right now, like compared to Cameroon. And that was very interesting, like trying to understand where that came from, and like also American bodies and like what we represent and how the U.S. portrays itself internationally.
Anyone else want to answer this question?
So I have a question. You all have been very, very deliberate and intentional of positioning yourselves like within this understanding that, oh, I'm this privileged Colgate student who is traveling abroad, and throughout your experience being hyper aware that I'm this Colgate student traveling abroad, or I'm white, or I'm a woman of color, in this space. My question is, and you may not be able to answer this right now, but what did you bring back? Besides this. And I mean, don't get me wrong, this is beautiful, right? Like I appreciate the whole like, oh yeah, I was a Colgate student and I was hyper aware of my positionality as being a Colgate student and being a white woman and being this and being that in this space. But because I think about James Baldwin traveling abroad, him going to Paris and then coming back with like this heightened sense of like, of course, racial inequality. But then when he came back from Paris, like that's what you get like, some of his most beautiful writing. Think about the Black feminist and Diller, her experience in Ghana where she was called a white woman, and then how she came back and how that just greatly influenced her and her writing. So outside of this whole like, oh, I was a Colgate student and I was always aware of who I was in this space, what do you have to contribute to a larger discourse about humanity, about, and again, self-awareness beyond your position as a Colgate person, and for the white women on the panel, like, more to say other than like, oh yeah, I was a white woman in, Cameroon or Mexico or whatever, because I don't know if this was intentional, but I noticed that like, and these are my friends and I love y'all, but the white women still spoke first, in this space. So how can we think about like, again, can you just talk a little bit more about what this did for your humanity, your contribution to like life, how did this help your interactions with your classmates, besides this like, oh, I went abroad and I deserve 5 extra gold stars because I was always aware of the fact that I was a Colgate student, in this space, right? So can you, like, and I don't know if you can answer that right now, but, but can you answer that right now? Beyond like this whole like, no, I mean, what did you learn about, and like, oh, like, and how does like this, because I think we're missing like this idea, like encountering another culture, right? Because in a sense, like I'm a displaced person, right? I'm a displaced Southerner in like the barren, literal, like barren North, right? And whenever I go back south, yeah, with the Trumpville. So whenever I go back south, right, I don't bring like this, like, ooh, let me show you all how to make beautiful dreams. Heightened awareness, yes, as my positionality as like a Black woman living in Trumpville, but also like how is this like informing like my larger understanding of humanity, of life, of literature, of culture not a commodity, but just how did you all grow as people? Can we talk about that? Again, not like y'all so beautiful stories, so.
Well, the shift to educational studies, might be a beginning. So,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I don't know if this answers it, because there's so many levels. I think one of the things I have brought back is the awareness of language that I didn't have before. I didn't really realize how some of the language in the coursework at Colgate was as problematic as it is in certain aspects. I came back and took, I'm actually taking a course right now that is an anthropology and Native American studies class, and the word primitive was used consistently throughout the course for an entire class discussion. And I kind of like raised my hand and I was like, hey, like, let's not use that word. But people still use it. So, but I'm trying, I think one of the things I brought back is trying to be more aggressive in asserting how we can create a safe space, and how people need to be aware of the language that they use and why they're using it. I don't know. That answers.
Oh, no, that's good. That's good.
For me, I think mine was a lot about community and my interaction with people, which I guess sounds cliche. But kind of Cameron had a very different sense of time. Like when we arrived, they're like expect to like not to start on time, or like for people to arrive late, or in your understanding of late. And a lot of that is that people cherish their time with people more. Like you're not in a rush. Like when you are having a conversation with someone, or if you run into someone, like you are actually present and you are a part of that. And that you also, because you are a part of that, you also see more humanity in people. So it's cherishing the time you have with people, but also not thinking that like if you're walking by someone that you haven't seen, or like or just like actually being present and being in the space and being part of that, and like being human to human connection, I think is really what I came away with. I came back, and I don't know if this like really means that, but I dropped like half of the activities I was in because I really wanted to spend more time with people I cared about, and I wanted to build a lot more relationships that I hadn't and that I felt like I needed to. So I think that really resonated with me. I don't know if that answers.
I'm gonna split this into two. So like academically and in terms of like my own like political and like social justice beliefs, I came back like more confident in my abilities, because like I was I knew my shit, and like I brought up some stuff that you taught me, and I was like, yeah, I know this. And then, but I also like realized where I needed to improve in terms of like how I support people, how I stand in solidarity. Like I learned a lot about like in Morocco, I learned a lot about like how to be like how to kind of like really actually like just listen. And I also, especially, and even in Amsterdam with sex workers, like we had a lot of panels, and they said just shut up and listen to us, pretty much, right? And like I learned so much. And then like personally, like this is gonna like we're recording this too. I came back and I like realized that I just do not like the way a lot of things like in the U.S. and at Colgate, like a lot of like the ways they're set up. Like I learned to put a better importance on like taking care of myself and making myself happy, and a lot of that was in response to the group I was in, where it was like very segregated and very like it was very hard, and I had like it was like hard because I did not feel supported, so I had to find that support somewhere else, and luckily I found a group, Alessandra, and luckily like I found a group of people that did that, and then I kind of learned how to just like really just like do like if you have the means, like travel, if you can do it, travel, if you need to get away, like kind of just like be selfish. And like I took 1 weekend to visit a friend with Alessandra in Ireland, and then I took another weekend, and I took another week to like go to Barcelona and go to France, and like I like felt lighter, so much lighter both times, removing myself from from like kind of the toxic environment I was in. And so like coming back to Colgate and like coming back from feeling so like free and so light, it was like I could like the closer I got to campus, like the more weight I felt. Like it was horrible for me, and it's still like constantly like I'm constantly like, oh, like I have to do this, but really I want to take care of myself. I want to write. I want to like decompress. Like I'm still decompressing from my time abroad. And then I just like when I was in France, like they have like even in Amsterdam they have like cafe culture. You literally just sit at a cafe for hours and like talk to your friends and drink coffee or drink wine, and just like I need that in my life, you know. I can't like I'm a very effective person, but I need time to just like sit and think and like be with the people I love and be with the people who like give me energy. And like Colgate and a lot of other places, they just drain the energy from me. And so and at one point my host mom was like, "You're too serious," and I was like, "What?" And she's like, "You're too serious," and she meant it in the most loving way. And I realized I'm a very serious person, yes, but I can also take time to just be happy, even if it's not and being happy is very hard to achieve, but just do something that kind of just it's fun, and that could be whatever. Right now I'm watching Steven Universe and that's fun for me. Or I'm with friends and that's fun and we could just sit there in silence, but we're with each other and them being around me gives me so much energy. Yeah.
So one of the things that I came back with was I love myself so much more. And aside from that, I'm still figuring out what I really took from Australia. And I love the country. I love the scenery. I loved the Great Barrier Reef. I loved being in nature all the time. It was so beautiful. But if I were to go back and do it again, I don't know if I think I would have taught myself to love myself more, to be with myself more. And that's something that every time I talk about this, I start crying. But it's just not being with friends, with Romelia or with Sarah or with Benny, people who actively look for you, and I'm just kind of really, I think I'm such an old lady, right? So I don't really come out of my room unless you force me to. I watch TV if I can all day. But it was just going on walks, not staying in my room, not watching TV all day being depressed, just going on walks, enjoying nature, enjoying my culture, playing loud ass salsa music in my room, even though people next door were playing the I don't know, just enjoying myself, knowing that I have power as a person, walking outside, stepping on the floor that I was stepping on, just knowing that I get energy from the earth and that I am energy as well, knowing that I am a human being. I wish I had learned that earlier, but that's what I came back with.
Thank you all so much.